once again, my good close friend Kamal Ravikant on the podcast.
James, this time it's really good to be here.
I am glad you're here too. And when people hear the story, why we're both glad you're here, it's going to be stunning, and we'll talk about it. But also, how many times have you been on the podcast? Have you been on?
I
Been
was
on
on
at
one of
least
your
once a year for the past 6 years.
no. I was on I think one of your very first when you
Yeah,
first started. It was actually a Skype one that we did when I was in San Francisco. Then I've been here when I went to Tibet, Nepal and studied with Tibetan mystic monks.
that was just
Um,
recently.
that was recently. I was there here once for the novel Rebirth when it came out, and then
Live your
this.
truth too.
Yeah, that was the very first one. That was the one we did over Skype way back in
Oh,
the
we didn't
day.
do love yourself. Maybe we kind of combined those two
No,
in one.
no, because Love Yourself already been out
I
and was
feel
doing
I feel like
fine.
we've just done some random ones too. No.
No,
All right. Well,
yeah.
this will be almost like in the category of random ones, but it's about a very important event that happened to you. I'll just say it real quickly. You came within minutes of death. If you didn't have if you as you told me, um, if you hadn't already been sitting in a hospital, you would have died. Like if you had been in a cab, which could have just as easily have happened, like in terms of
Mhm.
probabilities, you could have easily been in a cab at that moment.
Or
You
home or even in the emergency department, given the nature of what happened, several doctors on their own later on told me because they became friends that this would have been a one-way ticket.
how from so we'll get into the how it all started and why you were dealing with this in the first place, but just right at that moment, the way you described it to me is that blood, like an artery ripped, and we'll describe why in a little bit, but an artery ripped, and so much blood was coming out, it like ripped through the skin and was like almost like a geyser of blood above you. Just real quickly, how from that moment, if you had not been treated, how long would it have taken for you to die?
I don't know, but I've never seen that level of panic in a hospital, and I was inside it like a recover I was recovering from a surgery the night before, and the level of panic and mayhem and screaming and yelling and someone like it was insane. I mean, it was pretty close because one surgeon told me he's never seen someone rush to an OR that fast. Normally, there's a procedure. He said this was literally saving life. We had to get you in the OR.
Did you black out or did they put you out before they?
No, I was awake watching blood spray out of me like Yellowstone, but it wasn't stopping.
Okay, so let's back off,
All right.
back up a minute. And I remember a week or so earlier, we were talking on the phone, and you mentioned you were going to go into this hospital to solve an old injury, and it was you were choosing to have this surgery. It was an elective surgery, and you found, as you put it, the best doctor in the world or one of the best doctors in the world. And I even said to you, come on, just I don't like going into hospitals. People die in hospitals. Any surgery is dangerous. I don't care how good the doctor is. Just make sure you're making the right
I remember that.
decision. And you were like, "Oh no, don't worry. I'll be in and out of there. This is doctors the best." And I offered to visit, and you said, "No, no, no. I'm gonna get out of the hospital right away." And then the next thing I hear, you almost died, not during the surgery, but in the events afterwards. So first off, uh, this was an elective surgery. You didn't have to have it. Why'd you decide to get the surgery? What was the
It's an old
surgery?
athletic injury that I had, and it was like I take such good care of myself. I'm at a place in my life where I was like, look, I should not have to deal with any issues. I just fundamentally take such great care of myself, and I was tired of dealing with this injury issue.
Was it like a constant pain,
No,
or
I was having blood flow issues and so forth because it was like injury to a blood vessel, and they had gotten fused together, and so. But it's to get to it is very complicated to fix it. I tried other things, it didn't work, and then I have this fundamental belief that every problem is solvable. No matter what you work your way through, you'll figure out a way to solve it. And I eventually did. And I found a guy in New York actually. And this surgery actually required a couple of surgeons because it was very complicated, right? But it was very nuanced and thorough. And it was a 5-hour surgery. It was very intense
so
and
they had to unfuse these,
unfuse,
and this is in the abdomen
reroute
level
arteries,
layer?
and yeah, starting from the abdomen and going all the way through the groin. Just the whole area is there's all these rich arteries and move some and like it's not like I have an issue with my blood vessels. It was literally it was what it turns out was an issue from an injury. It was some injury that I honestly don't even remember, but it was all the hallmarks of an injury. Um, so I went in to get that done, and, it's the surgeon, the chief surgeon, he would come by my room every day. I was
Well, how did you why did you decide to get it? I mean, again,
mm.
you said you wanted to solve this problem, but were there other circumstances like, this you became aware of this doctor? Like, what
Yeah, it was just like I found a solution, and it was like, well, why the hell not? Get it done. Just be fully optimized, just have everything working.
but again, like, given
No, I
the
didn't need to have it.
given that there are statistics that suggest that no matter how good the doctor is, surgery is a risk. There's several layers of risk, right? You're gonna be put under an anesthetic, which people die from that or suffer damage from that. You're gonna be cut open, which we think is trivial because it's done every day millions of times in hospitals. But you're gonna be a knife's gonna be cutting you
No,
open.
there it was gonna be more than cutting me open. It's pretty involved, and it was something I thought about, and it was something that it's an injury that had been bothering me and getting in my way of living fully, and it was like, I just wanna live fully, you know?
But do you feel like um, and I don't know what the issues are, but I've known you for a long time. You live a very full life. You're very nothing seems to hold you back. And um, do you think one way to solve the problem could have been more, mental than physical, since this was elective?
When it comes to mental, I rock the world. So, I mean, like, I'm pretty I mean, like, really, if anyone works on his mental self, it's me. Like, I have a level of mental discipline that I've found rare. So it wasn't it wa I've done the mental work. Then it was a matter of what's next. I think I just kind of was frustrated, and it was getting in the way of my living life how I wanted to live, and I found a solution. And, in those moments, you don't think every surgery has risk, but you don't think of yourself and it being the risk factor. If you look statistically, the odds are really low. And, the surgeon actually told me when he would come to visit me in the mornings, and he was like, he actually was very kind. He said, I wake up every morning thinking of you. You're the first thought I have because I just so badly want you to get better. Because he was, and he said, like some of the residents, because it's a teaching hospital, really shook up. And he said he had to pull them aside and explain to them, like, look, you go to medical school and you learn physiology, anatomy, and you cut up open a body and blood vessels, and that's a human anatomy. But he said, there's like 6 or 7 billion people in the world, and I'll tell you what, every single one of them is different. No matter how much anatomy you learn, every single person somehow reacts differently, and you just never know. And you happen to be one of the outliers that whatever happened, happened. And, it was like he had to actually sit some of the residents down who were shaken and, like, explain to them that way
You mean after
after
the
what happened because they were there. I remember one actually, like, his hands on me, like, trying to slow down the spray of blood. I was gushing
so
blood on everyone,
so you had this surgery. It was this 5 or 6 hour surgery
and it was a
and
complete success.
complete success. You're in your hospital room. You wake up after the surgery. What's I've never had a surgery where I was put out. Like, what's the first
So
thing you
you
think?
you don't wake up in a room, you wake up in a ward where they have many patients, and I had a nurse assigned to me. And this is the only negative thought I have about the whole experience, honestly, because the surgeon came. He said, "Wow, you're doing so well. We're gonna discharge you in a couple of hours. Like you're doing gangbusters." And she said you need to get up and walk around. And I started to walk around, and something in me just felt like all of a sudden like something broke, and it started to hurt. And I remember saying to her, "Look, I need something for pain. I need something for pain." And she just poo pooed it.
Or can I ask? Because I'm curious because I've
Yeah.
never been through anything like this, and I want to know for my own self if this happens. O obvious Obviously, the way you just said it and even the expression on your face, it wasn't just that you were having some pain relating to
No, you
post-surgery.
felt
It
something
felt like
inside
something
break.
something was wrong. Like, that's a different type of feeling than just
It's
soreness or
like
pain.
it comes out of nowhere. It's like if you get hit by a bat, you feel it, you know it. There's no doubting. It was like literally like I got hit by a bat in my abdomen
So
or
so
groin.
so what could you really have asked medically? Like, could you have said, "I need an X-ray right now," or "I
I
need"
was just
like, would an X-ray have
no,
uncovered it?
no. I think, but immediately what happened was it started growing bigger down there, like because blood started pooling. An artery burst, and an artery bursting is a
When you were
one,
walking around, the artery
yeah,
burst.
and
So
that's a
so
one way
so
street.
so you went from lying down to walk in. I'm sorry, I'm
Yeah,
slowing you
yeah,
down. I'm just trying to understand.
yeah,
You've been living the story, so
yeah,
you
yeah,
take
yeah.
the shortcuts, and I'm trying to understand what happened. So you had the surgery. You're lying down. You wake up. Nurse suggested you walk around, which is not a
She
bad
didn't
suggestion,
suggest it. She was actually pretty forceful about it, and
but
which
it's
I
not a bad
think it's
suggestion.
not a bad one because to get out of the hospital, you got to walk your way out, right? So like, I don't blame her for that. Um,
But when something's wrong, how can they check what is wrong?
I think
What should I really ask
honestly,
for if it happens to me?
she r-
Gonna
get
make it
me
all
a
about me.
fucking doctor ASAP
But okay, so that was the
because the
pain.
nurse is not going to do anything.
So basically, the advice I'm hearing from this is when something feels wrong as opposed to just sore, you you need to exaggerate it. You need to actually like really demand the doctor,
Yeah.
the greasy
Because the
wheel,
only
whatever.
the nurses don't they're so paperwork dependent there. And also, one thing I've learned being in insane pain in the hospital, they're all terrified of giving you more painkillers than not because of this whole opioid epidemic. So
But that's true. But there are
even inside the hospital.
but at the same time, it's one thing when they're giving you opiates for home, which you could
No, no, it's
abuse or
interesting. I
whatever.
experienced that in the hospital, right there. And she, she wouldn't give me because I was like, just give me something for pain right now. She wouldn't. She's like, no, you'll have to wait. You'll have to wait. She was very firm about it, and to the point where I was hurting so bad, I had like sweat and tears streaming
Like,
down.
what was it? A sharp pain?
It was like literally like you get hit by a truck. Like it it just shocks you. Like, you how to say your body goes into shock? You're literally in full on shock. You don't even know what's happening. It's like, but something's inside you is coming apart.
So you're like, so were you shaking?
Shaking, sweating, like tears, not without crying, tears coming out. It's like your body just starts to
And where, like, a pinpoint where the pain was?
it was all just my lower part of my body because an artery burned inside over there. It's one of the arteries I worked on actually.
Mhm.
And the good news is my blood flow and everything, my pressure is really good. It's just that it's strong. It's strong and as it should be, except it might have been whatever, surgery, whatever they did in surgery didn't hold. Or
So they opened up an artery or they stitched up an artery, and
they moved an artery around, a couple of arteries around.
and so when they move arteries around, they have to stitch them back,
Yeah.
sew them back up,
Yeah.
and one of those stitches didn't hold,
Yeah.
and when you walked, it unstitched.
Yeah.
And was this a stitches that they were going to remove later,
No, no, these
or
were, I mean,
permanent?
and arteries, like you can't go to remove
So
stitches.
why like, I would think since they don't care so much about removing the stitches later, and since it's underneath the skin, they don't care about
It's deep.
appearance,
Arteries are deep. Yeah.
but they could use very strong material to sew up the artery. What was the problem in the stitches?
I never asked because at that point, you don't care.
But even now, I'd be curious.
I could, but at this point, I only care about getting better.
So,
You
okay,
know,
so you wake up, you're walking around, you're in this massive pain. Y I think maybe the mistake was not that you made mistakes, but I'm just trying
the
to.
mistake was asking for something for pain rather than saying, "Give me a doctor."
Right, right, because then it put her on the defensive because everyone
Yeah.
asked for pain, they want
Yeah.
opiates, and you could have said you could have focused on medical
Literally,
help.
I should have been screaming at her, and she just wouldn't even listen to me. Like I was, like,
If you could do it again, what would you do differently? Like,
I
in
literally would have screamed for a doctor.
would you have gone to the ground?
I would have
Like, maybe I would fall to
I
the
would have
ground.
passed out if I'd got fall to the ground. I remember just standing there trying my best not to pass out. And then I got to my bed, and all of a sudden, my stomach expanded, everything expanded because it was pooling with blood
Did she see
because I
that?
was bleeding out. And I was showing it to her, and she was like, "Oh, I've paged a doctor. I paged a doctor." I'm like, "There's a difference between paging a doctor and getting a doctor right away." And that's where I think and I talked to the surgeon about this afterwards. I was like, "Look, I only have one issue. This nurse, when she saw what was happening, she still was very nonchalant and just did a basic page. When someone should have come, and I wouldn't have had to deal with the bursting, which is where all the post-op pain has been, and which is what almost killed me." Um, but in some ways, I look at it was that's the negative. The positive could be her making me walk around and bursting there, maybe save me from it bursting in the Uber ride 2 hours later, which would have killed me.
Yeah, because
So you never know.
maybe, like, if you hadn't walked around then, if you had waited a half hour, maybe it would've
Yeah,
been a little bit more solid, so you
yeah.
would've made it out the door.
2 hours later, burst in the Uber and you're gone. And
So again, though, there's some missing gap of knowledge, which is understandable, right? It's like the doctor said to the residents, everybody's different. Every surgery is different, but there was a not necessarily a passiveness, but you had 2 choices. You said you were in pain, you were saying what was happening. So in pain, you have 2 choices: get a painkiller or get a solution, the doctor.
Yeah, my
It
mistake was asking for something for pain.
and were you feeling, shy about asking for the doctor? Like, I think I
No,
would
no,
feel
no,
shy about
no,
asking for a doctor.
no, no, but it was like I figured they were trained well enough, that they would know what to do.
That
Uh,
might have been a mistake. Not that they're
yeah,
not trained, but it's just that, like the doctor said to his residents, every situation
yeah,
is different. Maybe she had seen this situation before, and she just saw it with people who needed painkillers. So
yeah.
you don't really know what her
Yeah, you
catalog of
can't really
experience
like
is.
yeah, that's one of the things I've been avoiding is trying to put blame on her, but I'm just trying to do what the situation is and what the outcome was and what the outcome could have been. Maybe she saved my life by being an ass. you know?
But I think in terms of, like, your future experience and my
For
future
any
experience
your
and the
future
experience of
experience,
the
anything,
listeners.
just immediately demand a doctor. The nurses can't they're literally every decision they make, they have to there's so much paperwork on like, even when I was being wheeled into the OR for emergency surgery, I'm, like, doing my best not to pass out, there's blood spraying out of me, right? And they're making me sign paperwork for blood transfusion. "Do you want blood are you okay, blood transfusion?" And while blood spraying out of me, "Yes, I am."
We
You know?
we still have to, back up a second, but what if you didn't what if you had blacked out then? What if you didn't sign that,
I don't
document?
know, because there are certain religious groups that are against blood transfusions, so I don't know what their policy there is. Um, but I'd had surgery. Keep in mind, 12 hours before before the surgery, I signed yes, I want if in case give me a blood transfusion. So I'm assuming they would have used that. But they were making me sign paperwork, even as I'm bleeding to death.
Okay, the blood's pooling, she sees it,
She's
acts nonchalant,
yeah,
giving her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she has seen um, you know,
swelling or
bruising
whatever.
like that
Yeah,
before or whatever. But swelling seems odd because that means something's
yeah,
happening as
yeah,
opposed to bruising, which is more normal, I would think,
yeah.
post surgery. But anyway, uh, and then what? You're back on the bed. She's not giving you painkillers, and she's paged a doctor. You're in pain. The pain didn't subside once you got back to the bed. What happened next?
Then at this point, I'm writhing, and it's almost like you're in between a stage of awake and blackout, where you're like you're there's a tunneling happening, and then the scariest things happen. I heard the sound, and it literally sounds like a hose bursting, and I look down, and I'm spraying blood out.
So the blood had pooled up so forcefully
Yeah,
it broke through the skin.
yeah, it broke through, tunneled, created almost like a tunnel somewhere in the flesh, and went through it. This is a that's a I mean, if you think about it, artery, like very pressurized system of pipes inside, and an artery is as pressurized as it can get. When one breaks, you got a fire hose coming out.
But I still don't understand, like, how did the stitching
This wasn't even
unravel?
stitching. This was on its own in a place that was no stitching. That's how powerful it was.
Like, so why did it happen?
Um, it found a space where it just pooled and it was coming out so forcefully.
But
Just
why
think
was it
one.
coming out forcefully? Like, why was there this pressure? I feel like
That's because arteries are if you arteries are under pressure. I mean the whole
right, but like you say,
cardiovascular system.
the pressure goes into pipes that go in and out of the heart. Why did it suddenly go in a different direction?
No, no, you don't understand. If the pipes that are coming out of the heart, artery blood's flowing out, it's flowing under a certain pressure. If if you create a hole in it, it's going to spray out at that pressure until the spray slows down. That means blood pressure's falling, 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 and you're dead.
But what since the surgery was a success, why was there the pressure to go outwards as opposed to just continue through the pipe system?
Because I think where they did the stitching, it burst.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. So
Yeah,
why the stitching must have been very powerful stitching. Why did that stitching burst?
that's you can ask God, or you can. I don't think even the surgeon could say why. They did their best.
I mean, if he had double stitched it, I'm just making that
I
up, but if he
mean,
had done a barrel
that's
stitch,
like for neither here nor there, right? Like all I can look back and say is, they did the work, it was working, and then this was an outlier. There's no way to tell that, stitches do come apart sometimes. There's nothing you can do.
yeah.
In fact, I had stitches burst again a couple of days later, but these were fortunately external stitches.
Okay, so uh, pulling, and then suddenly did the stitches in your skin open up from the pressure?
No, no, no. This was a The pressure from the artery was so strong. It's like, imagine you have inside a fire hose that all of a sudden you have a hose that's fine, and all of a sudden it bursts. Now it's just spraying and just spraying a particular direction, and it's so forceful that it
It
just
just
like
ripped the
tunnels
skin.
through and it starts pooling, 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 and that's stretching the skin out, stretching everything, and I'm losing a lot of blood really fast. Your blood is supposed to stay in your cyst. If it's pooling in your body, you're bleeding to death right there internally, and and it might have been lucky actually that it burst up because that got her attention.
Yeah, because if it kept
That
pooling and spreading,
I
what
would
could
have died.
happen
I
if
would have died by the time they probably got her attention. Like I would have passed out.
so, um, okay, so, you heard this hose, like, hissing, and suddenly it's like a geyser of blood. How much blood?
Well, I wasn't measuring it, but it was a freaking spray hose. It was a psst, the sound. It was like it's funny, the writer in me still like at the time was like capturing details. You know how like as we turn into stuff to be writers,
Mhm.
we always capturing details. I remember thinking, that fucking sound. It sounds like a hose. And but there was also this moment of pure horror because how often do you get to see blood? It's only seen in the movies. It was like that scene from Aliens, when he has the alien come out of his stomach. But here I was like watching blood come out of my own lower abdomen, uh, groin area, and it was like this horror, just absolute internal horror because you like something in you starts to feel like like things are just slowly going like that because you literally the pressure's dropping so fast. They had to get my blood pressure, and at that point they can't a cuff won't work, so they put a line into a different artery because they need real time because it's falling. They need to know like, geez, how close is this guy? Um, and you feel it, and then that
What do
immediately
you
was,
feel?
I mean, insane pain. Like I don't even know how to describe pain like that. It's like pain, almost like a blackout kind of pain.
Were you screaming?
At that point, I think I probably was, but more like, "Fucking do something."
What were you w c co describe, like, between the pain and fear, were you starting to feel fear as well as pain?
It wasn't fear, it was more horror. That's the only way I can describe it, is a pure sense of horror, just watching yourself bleed out,
Did
and
you
so fast.
did you think at that moment or any moment, did you think, "Uh-oh, I might die here?"
No, not at that moment, but when we go to the OR, I'll slow down, and as we go to the OR, I'll tell you that moment. And that moment is just pure horror. It's like, "Do something."
And so
And
she wakes up from her
immediately, there's 6 doctors there in a second. Look, when you need to die, so it's not like, "Oh, I'm paging a doctor, I'll get there." There were literally 6, because I remember they all wear at the surgery doc, they wear different color scrubs, and there were like 6 of them, and one of them, all of a sudden, gloves on and literally, like, compressing, he's got his hands on where it's spraying to try to just, like, push keep it from, like, spraying everywhere. So, like, trying to keep, like, maybe not all the blood just sprays out.
and so sorry
And
sorry
I'm
I'm
spraying
so
blood all over everyone,
but sorry I'm so naive on this. If he tried to push it back into your body, could that be
It's
bad?
it's not even push back. I don't know what they were just trying. Like,
Okay.
that doesn't stop your internal bleeding.
Right.
But
That's the
at this
thing.
point, they don't even know what's going on. All right. They're not the and then like just complete like mayhem, horror, screaming, yelling, people running out, me signing forms, and they're like, "We're gonna take you back in the OR." The anesthesiologist coming and saying, "I'm taking you back in the OR." Just asking quick those questions, and you're in this space between lucid and just horror, lucid and horror, like trying to answer questions about like, "Hey, do you have any, um, allergies to this or that?" You answer those questions, so you have to use your brain into like something in you is slowly shutting down, like winding down.
But maybe also them asking you questions allows you to stay alert.
Possibly.
So that
Yeah,
could be
yeah,
part of it is like keep him occupied so he's not thinking about the or not focused on screaming or whatever, I don't know. But
yeah.
let me ask you a question. This is the
And keep in
final
mind, the pain was just horrific.
but
Yeah.
like before the surgery, I was saying to you, do you do you have an advocate that's gonna be there with you? Can I go and be there? I think you mentioned your brother also offered and you told him no. And, you know, it's important to have, you're being cut open, even for the initial surgery, even if it's like a no-brainer, it's the best surgeon, it's important to have an advocate on your side just in case something goes wrong. Why didn't you
Yeah,
not have an advocate?
because 'cause I'm stupid.
That I feel that's an
Honestly,
easy answer.
I mean, look,
You're not stupid.
I I can't I'm stupid for a smart guy sometimes. How's
No,
that?
but that's you're not stupid.
Okay,
Like,
here's
you
the thing. I thought it was gonna be very cut and dry. I didn't wanna bother anyone. Um,
but nobody would have been bothered.
Fair enough. And honestly, in that case, you need an advocate who actually knows the system. Because what would an advocate have done that to the nurse, you
I
know?
would have screamed for a doctor,
Okay,
and you
alright,
were in pain, so you
yeah.
couldn't and
Fair
you had
enough,
just gotten out of an anesthetic, so you
fair
were
enough.
groggy.
You're absolutely right.
So at the
Mm.
very least, you would have had one the advocate is specifically there to be annoying.
No, you're absolutely right. I screwed up there. Um, you're absolutely right. If someone else had been like if I saw that happen to someone I love and a nurse was being nonchalant, I would literally grab her by the throat and for them and say like, "Look, you're calling a doctor or I'm taking you out."
I remember one time, this was with, my ex, her father-in-law was in the hospital, and he was in a medically induced coma, and from cancer treatments, and they needed a bed in the critical care section. So they were literally trying to convince my ex-mother-in-law, "Let's pull all the tubes. He's brain dead. Just we can't really keep him in this bed anymore. It doesn't make any sense for him to be on all the tubes and stuff. Let's just end
Mhm,
this." And she had never been really in a hospital before. She was from farms in the city at Sloan Kettering, all these doctors telling her to do this. And so she was like, I don't know, okay, what I don't know what to do." And so an advocate, I had to be there and say, "No,
mm,
she's not brain damage. He's just in a coma." You could see every time they tried to wake him from the coma, he would move around furiously, and they thought that was a indication of brain damage. And I'm like, "No, if you have a vacuum tube in your going down your throat and you just suddenly wake up, of course you're gonna." And he's a huge guy, of course you're gonna move around, thrash around like anybody
yeah,
would.
yeah.
So it's like we have no clue. Like you can't. So
No, this is a very good lesson, James. To have an advocate, but also have an advocate who is willing to be vocal and knows a little bit, you know,
it can't be manipulated by a system that's.
yeah.
And I'm not blaming the system,
But there
but
is a system.
there is a system.
It's a very one thing I learned being in a hospital is just the level of bureaucracy. It's like it would make the English look like, if you ever look at colonial English bureaucracy, which is horrifying, it makes it look like a piece of cake. Hospital bureaucracy is the worst.
Yeah, and also they have protocols that you think are normal, but they're not. So, for instance, she had a protocol with you. You complained about pain. Her reaction was, "Page the doctor. I can't give you a painkiller." That was a protocol.
Yeah.
She's got a script. So, so I realized this a year or so ago when my daughter was in the hospital. She was being shafted into a lane that she didn't belong in, and I had to really. It was hard. I had to really take notes, see when doctors were contradicting each other, and take her off this protocol she was on. Now, that wasn't as life endangering as your situation. Yours, you had to react right away to the protocol you were on. But anyway, okay, now you're being the doctors are in action. Um,
It's literally like the movies. Like they get that right in the movies. Like literally mayhem. I mean, sometimes you see mayhem and you think, no, they're better mayhem.
what were you
Like
seeing on the doctors' faces?
mayhem. But one of the attendings who was gonna be the surgeons working on me, who had just worked on me 12 hours ago, she was very calm. It was her and her residents,
How can you
and
tell?
she was just calm. She was like, "Okay, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this." Um,
Can I ask what did she say she was going to do?
well, okay, so they wheeled me into the OR, and later I found out this is like this hit the world record in Columbia Presbyterian apparently, which is a huge hospital of getting someone into OR that fast. Um, and they needed the doctor who had actually done the work to go in because she knows exactly where those artery is, what was done. That was one of the things. If even if I got sent to emergency department and I'm bleeding out, they wouldn't know where to go. Which artery was it?
Right, because this blood might have
Yeah,
pooled around
yeah,
until it
yeah.
found the
Yeah, it would have
softest
been too
spot in the
late.
skin.
It was like really just the luck of the draw that it happened right there before I was discharged. and the doctor who worked on me was available, and they brought her. They came right
If that
back.
doctor was not there, what would they have done?
I'm guessing they would have called her, and she would have told the surgeon exactly. I don't know.
But during the surgery, there was more than that doctor there. There was
There were
probably
multiple
residents, there was nurses,
residents. There were multiple residents, and there were actually two surgeons in the original surgery. It was a very complicated surgery. Um,
so it was a backup surgeon just in case
yeah, but
in
they
this
have
situation.
their own specialties,
Yeah.
right? And so they wheel me in the OR. I remember like the thing about being wheeled into the OR, and I'm literally like they're rushing me in. They get me back in the OR, and they move me to the table. And she comes, and I really like her a lot. And I saw her a few days ago, and I thanked her for this. She just looked at me, and she was very calm, hands on the railing where they're putting me in the OR table. And I'm like, and she's like, look, so here's what we're gonna do. And I was like, Look, just don't just fix this. Make sure that what I came in for is fixed. I don't want to go through this just to come out and still dealing with issues. I'm like, just make me better." And she said, "Okay." I looked her in the eye, and she just looked at me in the eye. She's like, "Okay." And she said, "Okay, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go in your this. We're gonna go to your calf. We're gonna take out some veins. We're gonna rebuild this whole thing." I was like, "Great." She's like, "There'll be scars." I'm like, I don't care."
What was there a danger of if they're taking veins from the calf, was there a danger of a weakened leg?
No. It turns I found out later your calves and everything has so much redundancy built in with the circulatory system. There's no issues. They do it all the time for all
Mm.
sorts of things. Mainly for heart stuff. This wasn't that, but it's a very I found later, right? It's a very common thing. You never notice anything for your life. There's all these
S
redundancies built in the body,
so
which is
so
amazing.
I'm sorry I'm getting, like, mechanical, but is the idea is originally you had some because of this injury, you had some vessels fused together that were being separated. It didn't quite work out because of this bursting, so now they have to take some of these redundant veins from the calf to, again, properly unfuse these vessels that were
And to
connected.
actually now fuse now basically create a bridge between the burst vessel to a
Okay,
healthy vessel. Because the burst vessel, you can't just sew it up shut. The blood's gotta flow. So what they do is they just hook up like a bridge of these really beautiful big thick big veins, which are like now these big beautiful Alaska oil pipelines, which is even better than the original procedure, funny enough. But to do this procedure was more barbaric. Like I basically have a C-section. The procedure before had been very elegant, right? All sorts of like laparoscopic this here. Now they just went and started slashing. They had to get in, right? So like I look like I've had this, like it's like they just had to go in and full in slash and go in, and
okay.
also to get in fast.
So one thing that's interesting to me is you focus on her and her bedside manner. It sounds like she did 2 things good. Was one is she stayed in a normal conversational voice with you, and the other is she explained to you what they were doing, which whether or not you even understood what she was saying, it kind of probably gave you comfort that this person is presenting themselves in a very competent way, and they're explaining almost step by step, "Oh, this is just a we do this step, this step, this step, and you'll be fine." And you felt
Well,
good.
I didn't feel like I was gonna be fine because I could tell she's been calm, anesthesiologist to my left, and all around me is just mayhem. You notice the mayhem around you. Literally, like people running the OR, this, that. It's like people shouting at each other.
What were they
You.
shouting? Like, what were
I don't remember.
but I'm
James.
trying to imagine what was
They're
it
trying to get everything set up really fast because they need to go inside me fast.
so, like,
Yeah,
they're basically gathering all the specific equipment they need,
yeah,
all the
yeah.
specific kinda sutures or
Yeah,
whatever
this
they
was an
need?
OR that literally interesting enough, had just been finished and cleaned and it was ready for the next surgery. So it just happened to be open for a different surgery.
I see.
The
But
timing of it was pretty fantastic.
the reason for the questioning is I'm trying to avoid in my head the shortcut of picturing a movie where
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
mayhem in the
yeah.
operating room. I'm trying to picture specifically why,
Well, here's
as
the
opposed to just doctors running around, "Get this, get this."
it's literally like because it wasn't an OR prepped for my kind of surgery. They have but the most interesting part was when she so when my conversation with her is over, and now the anesthesiologist talking and prepping me, and still there's that guy with his hands on trying to like keep the blood from spraying to everyone. It's spraying on him, and had some fun conversations with him a couple of days later. He was one of the residents, and so at this point, now I'm starting to feel like this blackness coming, right? And I'm watching the blood, and something inside me, that's when I felt the fear.
That you might
That's
not come back.
it's like it's not even like there's no might in this moment. You don't think in terms of might. It's very interesting. You get so clear. There's no might. There's like flashes that went through my head. Flashes of a woman I love dearly that's now with me. Flashes of like flashes of like things. Flashes of like this is something in the back of my head going. What a shitty, messy way to go. And then flashes of just fear and horror looking. And then I remember the anesthesiologist put the mask, oxygen mask on my, and I ripped it off because I just had to get it out. And I looked at her and I like said, look, and she's wearing these glasses and these dangling gold pearling earrings. And she's got this beautiful tan skin. And I like, look, I'm scared. I'm scared. And that's all I could say. And she held my hand and it was so soft. And something we said, okay. And literally, and I'm starting to like, this is before the anesthesia is running into me, and something we goes, and she's trying to put the mask back on. I thought, okay, if this is it, something in you almost at that point stops fighting. And like, if this is it, this is it. This is the last thing I'll have seen. It's shitty, but it's the last thing I've seen. I literally remember doing that and then kind of like laying back on the table. It's almost like, and I felt like I fell backwards into like a dark ocean. And then they put the mask on me and then I disappeared.
So this is before the anesthesiology. You were feeling like you're falling back into this ocean
Yeah.
because you were also partially blacking out from the loss
Partial
of
back
blood
and from loss of blood, yeah.
and shock.
And shock. I mean, I
And
wasn't full on shock.
no, and I feel like so I hear what you're saying. Like you have a couple of choices when you're in that moment that's so critical to life or death. You have the choice of like saying, you know, okay, I'm going to surrender to this and whatever it is you were thinking, to kind of get through it. Was there any moment? But the other choice is feeling sad. Like, was there any flash moments of sadness? Like, I wish I
The
could.
flash moments were the interesting of honestly of the woman I love, and I'm not with her, and I still love her deeply, and just think I have flashes of her, and just the sadness of just going this way. And there was like a brief, not sadness, but it was like, what a shitty way to go. And we're all like a friend of mine said yesterday, we're all living on a knife's edge. I just happened to like experience it. And but at first, as a primal, this it's interesting. Your neurocortex, the thinking part, there is no thinking. You're literally so clear. It's not like doing any psychedelic or whatever where you still feel like you have a choice. You are so clear, and it's not. And there's a primal part of your brainstem part of you, like an animal part that's fighting, like fighting desperately, like there's blood's coming out of you. That stop it, just stop it, and then eventually you have to realize, and then the deeper party comes in and realizes I can't, and I have to let go. I have to surrender. And literally, it was the ultimate. Like I wrote about this later, waking up like shit. I got to live the ultimate surrender, where I had to let go.
K- and so similar. Um, so we mentioned this possibility of feeling like this feeling of surrender. We mentioned, this feeling of sadness, which you had a flash of. This is a weird question, but was there ever a feeling of relief? Because I think in my imagination, I have no idea how I'd react. Obviously, like you're describing it, it's so intense. It's moment by moment. It's something that's very unique to that moment.
There's no
And
thinking happening.
right. But was there ever a moment where you feel uh relief? Like I feel like I would feel
No,
slight relief.
no.
Like
I
this seems like a fine way to die, actually,
it's
as
a great
opposed.
question because there's times in my life where I actually have wanted to die.
But
I'm
not
pretty
even in
honest
a
about it.
suicidal way. It's
Yeah.
just like if this is it, fine. Like this is not so
No,
bad.
but it wasn't relief. It was more like a complete giving up. You have not giving up, but a giving in, like a surrender, because at this point, you realize you literally have zero choice. The moment of realizing, not knowing, the knowing it, here you are, blood spurting out of you, and this image of mayhem around you, and then just coming to terms with, and it's not like you're thinking this through. It's literally like you just know. It's a knowing after knowing after knowing after knowing. It's like This is very much likely the last thing I'll see.
But I think this is to your credit, like, um, a lot of people could be panicking right up until that moment of falling into the ocean, as you put it. Um, or you chose this surrender route, and I wonder if that's something, for instance, we just recently spoke about you were in Nepal meditating with these intense Buddhist monks, and you've done a lot of work on practicing surrendering, and I wonder if that surrender muscle was built up enough that that was the path you chose in those moments as opposed to a panic path or a
Honestly,
fear path.
I think it's actually a natural thing. You can't train for it.
Hmm.
I've done all the psychedelics, I've done all that. People talk about surrendering into ego death and all that. I've experienced all of it. When you're in the real thing, even when you're doing the ego death psychedelics, some part of you knows that you're still here. This is here. Your body knows. As you're feeling like the light, your blood is life force. You're feeling the blood flow, your life force. You're feeling it. You're feeling it drain out of you. It's like in the movies, when they shut down a computer, it goes. "Nying." You're feeling that inside nying start to happen. You feel it. Like I mean, I'm making it. I didn't have the sound effect, but I felt it, and I think the surrender, like when I did trauma research and I used to watch so many people die, and when my father died, and I've always thought about that, and I think that's a very human thing. That is the ultimate surrender when people are close to death or to death, that the surrender happens. That's a fundamental human
Do
experience.
you think that's and you mentioned, my guess is your answer to this is no, but do you think that feeling of surrender, which is which figuratively is kind of important in many areas of life. Like what's really happening is at this point you have no control over what's going to happen next. So there's no sense in the body or the mind paying any attention to it at all because you have no
Yeah,
control over it. Do you think that is something you can practice to even a fraction of that feeling again?
I don't want to.
Mhm. But I mean, it's a good thing to kind of surrender to the things you can't control and focus on the things you can.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of live that
And
way
too
these
often
days.
in life,
Yeah,
we
yeah,
try
yeah,
to control things we can't
yeah.
control.
I mean, I kind of live that way these days, but this level, I don't think one can practice for it. You really can't. We're all gonna hit it someday. Yeah.
So you go under. I assume you don't remember any part of the surgery at all, do you?
Thank God, no. But I do remember like falling backwards, actually literally like leaning back because I'd been like sitting up a little, just almost like if I could have grabbed the anesthesiologist of whatever when I told her. I just had to get it out. I don't know why. Something in me had to get out what I was feeling. And literally it was fear. I was like, I'm scared,
And
you
it's
know.
like you needed that one more level of comfort.
I let that level of I don't not comfort because I didn't know what she was gonna do. Right? They were trying to put me out and just it's I had to express it. I don't know, that was the primal thing. It's almost like like something in you still wants if this is a lot because if you express it, you're still alive. That there's an aliveness in expressing it. It was like that fighting to be alive. And then the aliveness, the only way I could be alive was just to express what I was feeling. And I didn't have much energy, so all I could get out was that word. And what she did was when she held my hand, and I just remember the softness of it, and something in that just was like, okay, okay. Like then all of a sudden everything gets quieter and you're watching this mayhem around you, like, this just could be the very last thing I experienced, the very last image of this life, and then leaning back and
And
then
you felt a sense of
no,
feel
no peace, none of that. It was more like that you quiet down and you fall backwards. It's almost like literally like you're falling backwards into an abyss like that, like an ocean in a dark ocean, and you're just falling. And this is before the anesthesia, so it's not anesthesia. And then they put the mask on me, and then after that, um, next thing I know, I'm waking up again for the second time now in 24 hours in a recovery room. But this time I have a couple of nurses there, doctors right there, you know. And
and so okay, you wake up and do they I mean, you're obviously probably in some confusion because you don't even know really what happened the first time. You
no,
don't really
I remember. I
but
woke up remembering.
but you remember what happened, but you don't know why it happened because it was happening so fast.
Oh, I
You don't
didn't
know why
care.
there was a
I
geyser.
didn't care why. In
Mhm,
those moments, you don't care why. You don't
mm.
care what could have been. You just care about what is. I didn't. I mean, and I talked to the doctor attending. I was like, "Look, you guys are amazing. You saved my life. I'm never gonna complain or anything. I'm just gonna tell you about one thing about that nurse who didn't pay attention to me, and you should know that.
Right, and this is not about complaining, by the
Right.
way. I'm not saying, "Oh, I'm trying to figure out a way to sue the hospital." This is more about just understanding, like, it's not information is power, so it's useful to.
No, I agree. And there's no better advocate. The nurse is not gonna be your advocate. Like, um, you're right. I should have had an advocate. Maybe
But even for yourself, so you wake up, and what's the first thing you wanna hear?
first thing I want to hear is they fixed it.
A
You're
and what did
that.
they say?
I asked him. He's like, "Yeah, we went around, we did the other procedure, and like your everything's working great." Because my thing was, I'd hate to wake up and have gone through all of this and
And it's worse.
still have the same issue I came in with. That would be a freaking that would I would be pissed. So my thing was like literally when I talked to the other surgeon, I was like, "Look, I don't care what you do, but fix this."
But did you at this point, you're probably a little bit skeptical
No,
because like, why trust them now when.
no, I do. I really like the surgeons.
Uh-huh.
They were good. Like these things happen, but the surgeons, they cared.
So
They were
did
good.
you say, though, did you triple check, quadruple
No,
check?
no. But I'm sure they did after that experience.
And did you say, "When will I know that this won't happen again, the bursting of an artery?"
No, no, I didn't ask that.
But they were pretty
I
confident
wasn't thinking that way. I was thinking like first, did it work? Second, I was in an incredible amount of pain. Like,
at that moment waking up.
yeah. So I was on also severe narcotics. I mean, they were like I mean, I got to experience hospital narcotics on an interesting level.
What, like, was it morphine or fentanyl or.
uh, Dilaudid, Oxycontin, like every hour and a half, all these mixtures. Like, they could have given me the pain pump. The only problem with the pain pump was it only lasts a couple of minutes or like a short acting, and so if you fall asleep, you wake up because of the pain, right? So that's they don't give they hold back on painkillers even for people in extreme pain in hospitals. And so the way the surgeon explained to me is like you have these choices. He actually said you have choices of the kind of painkillers we can give you. You will have better pain. Like we can give you morphine directly with that pain pump, but it keeps running out. So you're gonna have to keep on waking up in pain and then pressing a button, waking up in pain, pressing the button. I was like, I don't want to feel pain. I don't want to wake up in pain. Just give me the other one. It'll be less effective, but it'll be throughout. And and then I slept a lot.
So
Yeah,
when you were sleeping, because you weren't taking the maximum painkiller, were you having dreams about pain?
I don't remember. I was having interesting dreams. But I don't remember dreams about pain, but I just remember a lot of pain and being uncomfortable. I mean, look, it was 4 days before I could get out of the hospital bed and it just walk like 3 steps,
Like,
you know?
why 4 days? Like, 'cause everything
You've had your
worked.
abdomen slashed open, you like multiple times, and the second time, like, slashed open, you
Right? Because
know?
you probably couldn't have just gone home and taken care of yourself. You probably needed the help.
Oh, I couldn't beyond that, I couldn't leave the hospital. I mean, I was on, massive, IVs of this and that, and I'd lost so much blood. Here's a very interesting thing. I saw the surgeon after got released from the hospital. A week later, I went to see the surgeon for a follow up, and I said to her, like 2 days ago, I woke up and I can't quantify it, but I'm starting to feel like a certain sense of vitality. And she's like, "Oh yeah, it's because you lost so much blood. It's like your body's making red blood cells again." It's kind of interesting. Your sense of energy is actually biology.
Yeah, so actually, let's think about that for a second. So you lost all the old dirty blood in you,
I thought it was
and
good
and
blood.
now you're getting this transfusion of new, like,
Well, I don't think
young baby zombie
the Peter
blood.
Thiel. Well, I don't know if they give you as much blood as they give you plasma.
Mhm.
I don't think they give you a lot of red blood cells. They give you plasma. Um, your body has to because
The
but
plasma is like the precursor to.
it's the fluid inside that that's with the red blood cells taken out. I think they give you some. I think there's a thing to it because then I was in the hospital because it was so anemic because I lost so much blood. Like by the time I left, I was still severely anemic, and it's like my body's not making red blood cells. I'm starting to get more energy. Just the anemia is getting better. I have to take supplements for it.
But could this be a procedure for vitality? Like, hey, I'm checking into this clinic. Take out like all my blood, put in some new ones, and so I could feel that vitality.
Well, look, I mean, isn't that what they do in? and Tour de France with doping, the blood doping. They take out their own blood and months before, and they used to blood dope, I think, in cyclists, but it does work.
Yeah, I guess because the new blood has more oxygen.
No, or just your own blood, extra blood cells.
Huh.
You can have more oxygen.
So yeah, so why isn't that something that's more commonly done? It doesn't seem like it's unhealthy other than the
Hospitals are
risk.
not about being healthy.
Mm,
That's one thing I learned. They're about X and Y. Healthy is something different.
that's
Healthy is
interesting.
optimizing. Optimizing is something different.
So would you try to explore doing this part, at least, like finding a new way to increase vitality every now and then?
Look, I'm just letting my body rebuild itself. I'm eating really healthy. I'm giving you the building blocks. And it's amazing how your body recovers. Like every day I wake up, I f- the first 5 minutes are hard because I wake up and I'm like drenched in sweat from the pain because I weaned myself off the painkillers. Um, and literally, I'm like drenched in sweat from like I was in pain during the night. I kept on waking up. Um, but then 5 minutes later, I'm okay. And I am better than I was the day before. How often in our lives do we go through where every day you wake up, you feel better than the day before? I'm
Do you think
feeling that right now.
does it change your perspective? Like when I walk around during the day on an average day, I'm thinking about the 50 or so situations I have to make decisions on,
Hmm.
the people who make me happy, the people who annoy me, the people who are I'm like, going over a conversation, think, "Oh, I should have said this, I should have said that." Do you feel like a little bit lighter in the head psychologically because now you've been so focused on this life or death issue that also was incredibly painful?
It's interesting. I was telling my brother about this. I was like, my state of mind through this whole thing, even when I was in the hospital, like hospital bed, like I spent a week like basically lying in a hospital bed, writhing in pain. You know, um, and for how active I am, for someone who's that active to just be lying in a hospital bed, like hooked up to everything. I had lines in my arteries because to monitor my blood pressure. I mean, that's like as far as that real time data, right? But you got to go deep. So you right in my artery, um, and but yet my state of mind, except for like those moments of horror, right? And then sometimes like when you just keep on getting interrupted a lot, and some nurses were great, some of the nurses were downright rude. They're you human beings taking care of you, and and uh, but most of all, my state of mind was really good. If we were like to actually like if we were on a scale of happiness, I was like 7 to 8, because I was just like in a state of just like kind of like. But I've been that way since I came back from Nepal, like with the work I did, and also the work I do with my Love Myself practice, which I've been doing it very intensely. It was a sense of just gratitude. I've been like walking around that. I've been that even in the hospital in that when I had every excuse to feel shitty, right? I can't even walk, but walking 3 steps is like you feel like you have won that day when you walk 3 steps, right? I felt gratitude for walking those 3 steps.
Right, so
So
because
my state of mind actually is really. I was telling my brother, I was like, look, if I can go through something like this, which is a true test in every sense, and still throughout it all feel this way, that tells you my mind's pretty solid.
but also I'm wondering if because the magnifying glass, the lens through which we view our external lives, it's like you had a magnifying glass focused on just this one situation. So it almost crowds out every other situation in your life. Did you feel like it kind of put into a perspective many other situations in your life because it was almost like you were arm's length from those situations because of the how focused you were
No,
on this?
no, because when you're lying around a hospital, no matter how much painkillers you're on and how much pain you're in, you still think about your life. Your mind is still the mind. But in the end, it's almost like an underlying thing, um, which is the state of mind. And it's very interesting to realize the state of mind is not related to what's happening. State of mind, literally horror, almost dying, spraying blood everywhere. That's still not what your state of mind that has to be affected by. Your state of mind is a different thing. That's been a very interesting lesson.
But I don't understand. So it still seems like yes, you're focused on that you go through this life death experience. It seems like that would put other experiences in perspective. So other things that maybe you would
I'll
have
tell you
contrived
what, like
importance
I've
and
I've actually become more and more like less tolerant of bullshit. With this, I have 0 tolerance for bullshit.
Right, because, this is what I'm trying to,
Yeah.
or what I'm maybe getting at is sort of nuance is removed from the way you analyze a situation in life, because this was life or death. There was no
Well,
nuance.
look, before the podcast started, you and I were talking about a business decision I made after I came back from surgery a week later, talking to the CEO of a company I worked with. And like, I was so clear to him in the phone call afterwards that he literally was speechless. And all he was saying was, but he didn't know how to respond because you can't respond to someone when they're that clear and that full of truth.
Right, because
Yeah.
I would think a lot of times when you're interacting with people, when particularly in a, let's say, a business negotiation or something, you're so focused on nuance. Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
if I say this, is he gonna react like this, and how it will affect me this and this?
You,
So you
and then
just
you come out of this, you just don't, excuse my
right.
language, you just don't fucking care.
And so what I wonder is, can that state be recreated without that magnifying glass being so thrust on you?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it requires being in a state of, well, fundamentally, one, working on yourself, and second, living in a place of just being true in your communication, being true in your thoughts and your communication, which is a practice.
So let's say like a year from now, this is all past, you're all better, everything's great, and you start getting enmeshed in life's situations again, whatever they may be. What do you think is an exercise or a practice to kind of remind yourself of that state of truth that's not as nuanced and not as brought down by nuance? I'm using the word nuance because it's
Yeah,
both positive and negative. Sometimes
yeah,
it's good to analyze a situation,
yeah.
but sometimes it's good, like you say, or often my guess is it's better to just speak that plain truth.
You know what's
Because life is
interesting?
short, it doesn't matter.
You know what's interesting with this also is like if I people don't get to me anymore. Like if like if someone irks me or I think someone doesn't mean me well, actually internally my mind goes, "Huh, okay, that's cool," and it's like because I just don't care.
Okay, so like let's say I right now
Uh huh.
care about some situations, or let's say my brain is enmeshed in different situations and outcomes. What And I'm not gonna submit myself to a life or death
I
situation,
don't recommend it.
nor are the listeners. What's a practice you would suggest to kind of should one visualize
No, no, no. You know, the
life or
practice
death?
really is just being honest with yourself about your own internal motivations, your own internal thoughts. There's so much of our thoughts are bullshit.
Hmm.
So much of our thoughts are actually just old loops and just bullshit and
Wh-
fears and this.
What's an example of bullshit thought?
Um, for example, the CEO that I spoke with, right? The negotiation that he called me, he wanted me to do some work, and it was just like normally I would have like, I'm a nice guy, right? I'm a good guy. Sometimes I'm nice. Um, I would have at least like been nice, but I didn't even think of it as being nice or not nice. It was just clear. Like, look, this is what I this is what basically what I'm standing for.
So I think it's like not. I think what you're saying is like don't dance around issues because you're worried about 65 possible outcomes to your words. Try to double check, triple check. You're saying the absolute clearest truth that
Yeah, remove
that
the
makes you
bullshit.
feel this is right.
Yeah, you do that, you feel zero um any negative emotions about it, no matter how what the outcome. You're true. And but you have to be careful because we we have so many layers of bullshit inside that sometimes it does take like a traumatic experience to like wake that up. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. So I wonder how
I don't think
I
you can
believe
go
you. I
take a
think
10-day course to do this, honestly, James. I think it's more of a practice of being true to our first true to honest with ourselves. Because I had to be. I mean, like, look, as I was in that OR and the blood spurting out, the things that came to me were very honest, were very true. The images of like, uh, there was no nuanced thought. It was just clear, 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 clear. Um, I honestly don't know if we can live like that all the time. I mean, unless you're going to be a monk, which none of us want to. Um, but it's good to know that state exists and we can access it. But it would be a mental discipline. It's
Mm,
not something we can just take an online course or read a book and do it.
mm. I
It's
imagine like a meditation probably is a way of practicing for those moments.
maybe meditation is most of the time, 90% of the time, meditation you're just seeing your mind being a monkey,
Mm.
right? I think it's more of a like as a writer, I have a commitment to the truth. Everything I write has to have the not the not the details of what happened, but the actual emotional truth, the actual truth behind the experience. Um, and this is more now doing it in your thoughts. It's more of a commitment to self that I'm going to be true to myself, not to myself, but true in my thoughts. Because there is no bullshit you have inside with yourself after this. I feel very little bullshit. I'll be very honest about that. And I feel a lot of love for everyone, even people who I feel like who have not been good to me or whatever. But I think of them, like, "Ah, I wish you the very best." It's really interesting. It's like you kind of I just do. I just walk around wishing people, if I see someone on the street that doesn't seem to be doing well, I just like look at them and I really genuinely do wish them the best. I just I'm walking around just feeling that way these days.
Hmm.
It's so interesting, this fundamental inner state of just love for all.
It reminds me of something someone once told me about the Dalai Lama, that interacting with him, this person telling me, she said, it always feels like he treats everyone as if that person was his daughter.
Oh,
So
sweet.
whether it's a man or a woman or adult
Yeah.
or a child, because there's a certain kind of, love for a child and love for a daughter. And, it's a very, like you say, it's a very sweet sort of emotion. And it kind of like very quickly overrides, the usual enmeshment of emotions you have with people.
Yeah, I mean, he's done a level of training, a level of work, you
Mm.
know? I don't have that, you know? It's something different, but it's a more of a clarity.
Well, and how you feeling right now, today?
Uh,
This is
like
only
every
a
day I woke
week.
up today, like this was on October the second surgery of October 2nd. Today's what, the 23rd?
Yeah.
So what,
Yeah.
21 days ago,
Yeah. Wow.
I basically bled to death. I'm doing pretty good considering. Every day, like the doctor said, I saw this one of the surgeons, and he said, "Okay," because he knows just how important fitness is to me. He's like, "Okay, you're allowed to walk into a gym. You're allowed to sit on a bench. You're allowed to, at the most, pick up a 5 pound weight." And which is actually advice to give to anyone if you're a 10-year-old to a 70-year-old having surgery. I'm not special there. So I did. I went to the gym. I sat on a bench. And normally plates, I would just like these 45 plates on a bar. Normally I would just be grabbing them with just fingers and pulling them off and stacking them. Less than humility, I went to a guy who's a trainer. I'm like, hey, do me a favor. I just had surgery. Could you take this off for me? And then just doing 5 pounds just to move the body. And it's like a very interesting lesson in humility and patience, but also knowing like, look, today might be 5 pounds. Next week will be 10 pounds. Week after that, 15 pounds. Week after that, 20 pounds. I'm going to get better and
Can you
better and
stretch?
better. I have to be very careful with everything because I'm not out of the woods yet. I can't fly. That's actually downright dangerous for me right now.
Can you take a walk?
I'm starting to take walks. My longest walk was last night. Walks are good. That also keeps circulation flowing. So every day I'm getting better. I'm looking forward to like waking up a morning and not have been a night of sweaty pain, you know. And I'm also very lucky because I have things I'm working on, like um, I could be still on significant narcotics, but I have a book coming out and I have book proofs to review.
Yeah, I'm
So
holding it
like,
right now. It's Love Your it's the new expanded, much changed edition of Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. The cover is amazing. You can find it on Amazon. Kamal Ravikant. I encourage everybody to pre-order this because I think it's
thank you.
gonna sell really well. It looks great. Particularly, I like the acknowledgments. Um,
I
I'll read
mean,
them.
this book is gonna. If the first version changed lives, this book is really remarkably gonna change lives.
I think this I'm so excited. I thank you for bringing the galley to me, but again, I will say the acknowledgments to James, Christine, Saeed, Sal, Sydney, and Gideon. You made this book happen. Thank you. And the funny thing is, I only know who Christine is. I don't know who the rest
No,
of them
no,
are.
no. The first three people are the people who made the original book happen. The last three people are the people who made this version happen. But it's all the result of the first book and this book. And you're woven in this book. You
Well,
know.
come on. I always love everything you write. And your first book, Love Yourself, Like Your Life Depends on It. I loved it. Now, that was only like 10 pages. This is 240 pages or whatever. So I'm so excited. I'm going to spend this weekend reading it. And I'm glad you didn't die. That would have been a
Well,
drag. I
thank you.
really don't like going to funerals.
Yeah, it's interesting, like, you and I were talking, I was like, "Yeah, man, I mean, this right now, you could be just hanging with my brother in New York trying to figure out what to do with my body," you know?
Yeah, or I could just put a tear emoji on your Facebook page. It's like, "All right, Cam, I'm too distraught to go to the funeral," but no, I'm glad you're here and it worked out and you're on the
I'm glad
podcast
to be here.
talking about it.
I have things to do. I have some great work to put out to the world.
And you'll come back in a when's this book coming out officially?
January 7th.
So you'll come back in a month and we'll talk about the book.
Yeah. Thank you for having me and sharing this experience. It's such a knife edge experience that there's like nuggets in it that I hope that whoever's listening, found that they can apply. Your nugget of having an advocate is a brilliant one. I wouldn't have thought of that.
I think there's that, and I think this notion of surrender to what you can't control, there's something there. There's something that you know, it's like a surgery all the way through to the heart in terms of getting rid of all the stuff that doesn't matter, and I think there's something there worth thinking about.
Yeah, because I'm even the flashes of memory, the flashes I was having while I was in the OR, giving into the surrender. There's someone I wish who had been in my life, but who isn't, but there was nothing I could do, so I had to just surrender. There was nothing I could do. I was literally dying.
And that's so important for people to move forward because those hanging on to something you can't control is the only thing that will ever hold you back.
Yeah, I hold back from dying. You know?
Maybe, yeah. There was nothing you could do. You were forced to
There's nothing I
surrender.
could do. I had to surrender to the everything.
And most of the time we don't realize we're forced to surrender, but in fact, probably we always are forced, but we don't realize it. Then you
Sometimes
were
not.
forced.
I mean, sometimes you have choice. Um, it's never
Choice, but the choice is
black or
not
white.
useful. If you try to control what you can't control, it's not really a useful choice.
Fair enough.
But anyway, Kamal, thanks for so much for coming on for more reasons than one, and
Yeah, I
we'll
hope this
see you
was
back
helpful
on
to
here in
whoever
a month.
listens.
It was
Yeah.
helpful to me.
Thanks, James.
Thank you.